Hey there, I'm Sharmen. Today I want to talk about something that almost no one prepares you for after the painful breakup or a divorce. Not the primary betrayal of the breakup or the divorce, not the obvious harm done by the person who hurt you, but the secondary betrayals, the quieter ones, the ones that don't have language or words around them, the ones that linger far longer than anyone expects. I want to talk about what it feels like when people you loved, trusted, and shared life with stay friends with your ex. Because if you've lived this, you already know this is not a small thing. It is something that you also have to work through. Intellectually, you may understand all the right things. You know people are allowed to stay friends with whomever they want. You know that them staying connected with your ex doesn't automatically mean they've rejected you. You may even know logically that they can care about you and still care about him, and yet your heart cannot compute it. There's a dissonance that settles into your body, a quiet confusion that doesn't resolve with logic, a grief that doesn't move on a normal timeline. You may have even experienced genuine kindness from some of these people. At one time, they listened to you and they held you. They said they were sorry that you were hurting. They offered prayer. They hugged you. They sent you kind texts. And still, something fractured because they remain connected to the person who caused you the deepest harm. And if those friends are also your church family, the pain is even deeper because now the betrayal isn't only relational, it's become spiritual. It feels like harm being politely ignored for the sake of unity, like truth being softened so no one feels uncomfortable, like the cost of belonging has quietly shifted onto you. You start to notice the language. People saying, let's not get involved. It's not our place to say. We just want everyone to feel welcome. And what goes unspoken is this: your pain is inconvenient. The broken relationships, the sense of brokenness is inconvenient. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but functionally. It can feel like people are willing to look away from the damage done to you in order to keep the ex comfortable or engaged or present, or they just dismiss the harm. And that hurts in a way that's hard to explain unless you've lived it. Here's where the secondary betrayal really takes root, is the meaning-making spiral. We don't just experience the behavior, we start assigning meaning to it. What does it mean that they still invite him and engage with him? What does it mean that they don't ask how I'm doing anymore? What does it mean that no one checked in after the divorce was finalized? What does it mean that they like his posts, comment on his life, celebrate his milestones, while mine pass quietly? And without realizing it, we start filling in the blanks. Maybe I didn't matter as much as I thought. Maybe I was always more disposable. Maybe my pain wasn't legitimate. Maybe I am the problem. Maybe I am too much. Maybe I'm not worth standing up for. This is where identity wounds get reinforced. Not because those people explicitly said those things, but because silence and distance invite interpretation. There is a relational loss that no one names. There is also a very specific kind of grief here. These are not people you necessarily want to cut off. You're not asking them to pick sides. You're not demanding loyalty tests. And yet, because they stay connected to your ex, you can't pick them. You can't relax with them. You can't be fully authentic. You can't trust that your story is safe and your heart is held. You don't know what version of you they've heard. You don't know what assumptions they've formed. You don't know what's been subtly rewritten. So you pull back. And then comes another layer of pain. They don't reach out anymore. They stop checking in. They stop offering kindness, which often confirms the fear, the very fear that caused you to withdraw in the first place. It becomes a closed loop of loss. And then there are the moments that catch you off guard. You scroll social media, seeing all of them together in a photo, laughing, celebrating, moving on. And your body remembers the first moment you realized, these are no longer safe people for my heart. That realization lands like a quiet death, because these were once your people. We long so much for justice, and for many, there's still an unresolved ache underneath all of this, a longing for clarity, for truth to be spoken, for the air to be cleared, for someone to finally say, that wasn't okay. This wasn't okay. This caused real harm. You didn't imagine this. And sometimes, if we're honest, there's a desire for the ex to feel even a fraction of the pain they caused. Not revenge, but recognition. That longing doesn't mean you're bitter. It means something unjust remains unacknowledged. Is there a fix? What do you do with this? Especially when it's been years, sometimes more than a decade. What do you do with grief that hasn't fully resolved? With loneliness that resurfaces in certain rooms? With the quiet ache of people you still have to see? I wish I could offer a clear antidote, but there isn't one. Time does not heal all wounds. Distance alone doesn't either. What does help is learning how to manage your own internal environment with honesty and self-respect. The most important course of action is this: refuse to assign meaning or motive to other people's choices. Not because they're right, not because it didn't hurt, but because mind reading will keep you trapped in a pit that steals your life. These are people choosing what works for them. They have a God-given right and responsibility to do so. So let them. And then decide with clarity and compassion for yourself how much access they get to your heart, your time, and your emotional energy. Boundaries are not punishments. They are acknowledgments of reality that help you to maintain your own sense of self, even with the grief. Here's a simple but powerful reframe. Stop trying to interpret what people mean. Start observing what they do. Behavior is information. If someone doesn't reach out, that tells you something. If someone avoids depth, that tells you something. If someone cannot hold your truth and your heart and remain present, that tells you something. You don't have to villainize them. You also don't have to entrust your heart with them. You cannot deeply connect where you cannot be deeply authentic. So don't pine over what isn't possible. Reach instead for what is. This often means grief first, grieving the end of a chapter, Grieving people who are still alive but no longer available to you. Grieving what you thought community would be. And then slowly, intentionally choosing life again. Reach out to new people. Deepen relationships with those who have shown themselves safe. Allowing yourself to experience new corrective emotional experiences. Healing doesn't happen by erasing the past. It happens by living well now, by processing, by choosing wisdom, by stepping toward connection instead of staying frozen in the loss. Yes, something was broken. And if no one is willing to acknowledge it or make repair, then some relationships may be irretrievable. But that is not the end of your story. It may be the end of a chapter, but not the book. You still have life to live, friends to make, joy to experience, meaning to build. And you don't have to do that alone. If this topic resonates with you and you find yourself stuck in unresolved grief, betrayal, or relational confusion, I want you to know there is support available. At livefound.org, we work with individuals navigating the long-term aftermath of relational trauma, betrayal, and identity loss. Together, we focus on clarity, emotional integrity, and building a life that feels grounded and whole again. You can schedule a session or learn more at livefound.org. You are not weak for feeling this. You are not broken beyond repair. And you're not meant to stay stuck in the aftermath of someone else's choices. There is still life ahead of you.